Hey guys, Mike from Glowmark Designs. Just wanted to introduce our YouTube channel to you today. We specialize in laser engraving services and promotional product. We're excited to introduce our YouTube channel. Our channel is going to be a great way for you to keep up with what we're doing and learn some more about us in the process. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and directly on the website. That's www.glowmarkdesigns.com. Through all these platforms, we look forward to providing you with some helpful information on our services, some marketing tips and strategies, business ideas, and our projects. And with that, there's no need to drag this on. Let's get into today's video. Hey guys, I'm just doing a quick video today. This one's going to be on how we make our pricing list. So we had a local boutique, Made For Me Boutique in Mantino, and he reached out to us about making this into an acrylic price list for him. So the first thing I needed to do was, ideally this would be a little bit higher quality and I could trace this and it would be fine. As you can see there, it's not very high quality, so even when I trace it, and I've tried playing with the settings, I've tried doing a few different things, you can tell it's still got a little bit of issues with it. So what I ended up doing was actually using some AI tracing tools, and I was able to identify that this is a font, I believe it was called Lato. So I would take that, and what I would like to do is actually make it a different color. Makes it a little bit easier to replace it. Size it roughly to the same. They said I'd identify that font, and I can go down, find it. I would take that font, lay it over it, try to size it as such, right about there. Drop it down, get as close as I can to that same spot. And I've kind of overlaid it. So I go through and I do that for this entire, basically this entire price list. See these, I can unshow my red one, do a quick delete on that, reshow it, and that's the process I follow. Something that I had talked about with the client is when she sent it to me, and I read this additional jewelry section that actually mentions taking the $10 off, saving some money, a total of 3 chains for $30 in savings. That's something that I think you want to bring more attention to. It's a psychological effect of, seeing something of value for a cheaper price. So if they feel like they're going to get, I can save $30 off of these chains, it'll get people to at least take a second look. So I didn't want it to be kind of buried at the bottom all by itself. So in some discussion with her, this is going on clear acrylic. So this will all be engraved. It'll show up with like that frosty whitish appearance. And I mentioned, hey, could we maybe use, I've got some mirrored acrylic, and we add just something around that. So we did discuss it and she agreed. So this was actually my final product here. Like I say, I made the board itself. She mentioned that it would be a pop-up shop, so I didn't want it to be too squared off and scratch somebody, or it's just more for people to catch on, especially with it being clear. It's going to be a little bit harder to see. So I went ahead and I made that rounded off at the top, and then I am going to actually use that silver mirrored acrylic, and we're going to do the Made For Me logo in it. I'm going to add this little section here just to kind of pull the eye up, and then again I wanted to draw an eye down to this section. So by me going with that mirrored acrylic, the thought was people moving in front of the sign, people walking behind someone that's looking in the direction of this stuff. I'm hoping that they catch a little bit of that mirrored image right here, and it draws the eye to it. Anything I could do that would draw the eye, it would also make the sign a little bit easier to see, make people kind of at least glance in the direction of the sign, because their eye's going to perceive that movement. So that's what I ended up coming up with for her. Now I will get this set up on the laser, and then I'll kind of show you guys my process of doing that as well. Alright, I've got the acrylic set up on the laser now. I do have a Thunder Nova 51, so 130 watt. I ended up deciding to do this one a little bit different than I would some other times. I'm going to go ahead and cut the acrylic first. Only because I've got some other projects that I'm going to be basically trying to just use as much of the space as I can on this. And then I know I'm going to engrave this likely a couple of times. I want to try to kerf offset it and snap in the mirrored sections first, but if I can't, then I'll have to go back and I'll do an engrave. and I'll end up just engraving those sections nicely and then kind of letting it sink into the engraving, and then I'll attach it that way. So the first step, like I say, is getting that acrylic sheet on there, which I've got now. Normally I would want all of the engraves to happen and then the machine to come back and do the cut. In this case, I'm going to have it actually cut out the shape. I'm going to remove that sheet of acrylic. I'm going to get the paper pulled off of it, all the masking, get that cleared off, and then I'll line up the machine using, I've got the camera control as well, so I'll use my camera at that point. I'll show you guys that as well. We're going to frame it, make sure that I like exactly where it frames. Like I say, with it being the clear acrylic, I don't want it to be hard to see. I want it to stand out. I want it to be noticeable, but I also don't want it to be so big that it's not going to fit on the stand, especially at like her pop-up shops. She didn't want it to be huge. My next step, back at the computer, is getting all my settings in place. So I do try to do my best at keeping track of all of our settings. So if I start with my acrylic, put this back in millimeters, so it'll show me the thickness of the acrylic. The 3 millimeter is sometimes kind of finicky. So on something like this that I want it to cut all the way through 100%, I don't want to have to run it a second time, because if it starts to fall down at all and then the laser ends up clipping the edge of it, whatever the case may be, I'm going to go ahead and cut it at the 5 millimeter settings. The difference between the two, let's see. So it's a speed of 30, a power of 60 for the 3 millimeter. If we go with that 5 millimeter, that's going to slow us down to that 15 millimeter. And then that'll still be a power of 60 on that one. So that's going to be our step one. Just so I don't make a mistake later on, I'm also going to set my engrave settings. So we're going to be the same settings for both the engrave for the black section, which will be just our frosted words on the menu, and it'll also be the same for our mirrored section. I will end up going back and I'm going to change that, I believe. I keep going back and forth on whether I want to have that, try to do the engrave first and see if I like it, or if I just want to cut it and try to snap it in and let that all kind of fit tight. I probably will end up going back to a line and cutting it out. That we're going to have that set up. I've already got my laser on. I've got my air on. Everything's ready to go. And we will fire it up. Let her do her thing. I did already focus it as well. I'll set the origin again, just so it does return back to that same spot. We're going to let it cut. That's our board there. I'm going to go ahead and let this air compressor cycle through, and I'll bring you guys back. Alright, so I did end up deciding I'm going to go ahead and cut that out. I'm going to try to kerf it first and see if I can get a nice tight fit in there. So what we've got now is we've got the board itself actually on the laser, and we're going to drag this and line it up real nicely. I think that's going to get us about as close as we can get here. So we're going to go back to my cuts and layers. Again, we're still going to leave off that black fill setting. We're actually going to change this one to a line. We're going to take that red output. That was the one that cut the outside edge. We're going to take that off. We're going to turn on the gray as a line setting. And we need to... that one's traced as well. Alright, we need to change those settings to the acrylic 5 millimeter cut. So let's assign that. Again, that's a 15 speed, a 60 power on this Nova 51130. So that section will cut out the Made For Me logo. That's going to cut this little strip here, and it's also going to cut all these little windows around here for the mirrored pieces to go into. So I'm going to go ahead and let that run. All right, so I'm back. So that's how the board ended up coming off the laser. Sometimes you'll get like little bits. It won't want to come out. One thing you can do, I take my air compressor and I just gun it. That air compressor will push anything else that's out of there out of it. If there's any like little tiny strip of paper stuck or anything, it'll take that right with it. So you don't have to worry about that at all. So this is what I've got completed for this so far. Now I need to move on to that mirrored acrylic. Oh, this is the sheet of the mirrored I've got. It's still got the protective film on it, so it's going to look kind of scratched up till I take that off. I'm probably going to go ahead and at least peel the corner, and I'll start the cuts from down here. I'll try to nest it. I can give you guys a little demonstration on the nesting process too. But I'll nest it from down here. That way it kind of saves as much space as I can. I'll just use this tiny little section. But I'll bring you back once I've got that set up. Alright, I've got the acrylic on the board. I've got my settings in the laser. And if any of you had a real keen eye, ignore the mess back there, you'll notice I actually use this little Precut Checklist up here. Essentially, we made that for ourselves, and that will kind of just run you through a quick little checklist before you get started. So that is something I utilize before every cut. Just make sure I don't forget any settings, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to get that running. We're going to cut those pieces out. We're going to see how we land on it. Like I said, I am doing a 0.1 kerf offset on this first run. Okay, I've got all my pieces cut. I've got them all here. Now we're going to start getting it set for the assembly of the mirrored sections going into the clear. So you can see here pretty clearly the back of the mirrored finish is actually a film. They just lay that onto the back of the acrylic and then do whatever the process is for making it. But that's what the back is going to look like. So what we're going to do is we're going to fill it from the rear just because it's a little bit tighter. I want it to be as small and as tight as I can get it in these sections. So we're just going to drop these guys in there. Hopefully everything will be a nice, tight, hard to get in and impossible to get out finish is what we're going for here. Just line. These are all very tight going in. I did grab the wrong bore, so I've got the right one sitting here. I've got the wrong one in there. Alright, I'm going to actually use a small rubber mallet. And I got to find my E. I'm going to get that. I'll get those started, and I'm literally just tapping them in. I'm just going to use a real small rubber mallet. I'll even throw a microfiber down on the other side just so it doesn't scratch anything as they come through in case I do hit them a little too hard or I come through onto the wood surface behind it. So I'm going to knock that out, and then I'll come back to the video. Okay, I've got all those pressed in real flush. There it is on the other side. The mirrored finish. So now I'm going to go ahead and get this masking peeled off, and then we've got to get that set back up on the laser. That way I can do the rest of the engraving on the front. You know what? I'll actually mirror it. I'm going to mirror the image on the laser. I'm going to engrave in the back, so it'll be showing from the back side. You'll see obviously all the engraving on the front, but that'll give it a much cleaner appearance. But there's the mirrored appearance. There's the mirrored finish that I was hoping for. It actually turned out absolutely phenomenal. And as you can see, it's all real tight. I didn't even glue this up. I'll end up doing that little bit on these edges just to make sure that it's real nice and tight. But I don't foresee any of these bits coming out. They're in there. They're in there tight.